It's high time SpaceX faces serious business as the launch license is about to be released by the FAA, and that means the Starship test flight move will soon be up and running. SpaceX has been on this for a long time, and for several months, the company faced launch delays that would have paved more opportunities for space exploration and research. By now, the Starship would have been prioritized as the biggest rocket that has ever been flown above the Earth atmosphere using 33 Raptor engines. Of course, it will perform a role to change the story of human existence in the universe. What a great delay damage the FAA has done. Let's find out how SpaceX will finally receive the license to launch its Starship into space this year. From two reliable resources, SpaceX could be getting the FAA launch license for its Starship launch vehicle. If true, this could lead to Elon Musk's date of launching in late April actually being accurate. Well, we shouldn't raise our hope to think the Starship will be in the sky on this date until we actually see it happen live. Because the FAA seems to be SpaceX's major barrier of reaching orbit, no one knows what is likely to cook up along the line. We just have to continue waiting patiently and see what plays out. But all the same, this is it, the green light and the thrilling moment we've all been waiting for. According to two reports, SpaceX's Starship could be receiving a launch license from the FAA within 2 weeks, and the launch license to determine if the Starship will continue sticking on the launch or do what it was designed for. This same launch license has severely broken the dream SpaceX had for the Starship, but the company keeps staying put and optimistic, since what can be achieved if the Starship lands on the moon is greater than the barriers against it. And that's what the FAA had chosen not to understand. According to one of the official staff of the Dutch satellites, and also a member at the Space Netherlands National Space Museum whose name is unknown, yet he is always addicted to tweeting about space history and offers the odd glimpse into SpaceX company, claimed that the FAA was completing the requirements for its launch license. The tweet reads, "SpaceX should have it in hand in under a fortnight," referring to the launch license. And in case you don't really understand what a fortnight means, it basically means 2 weeks, implying that the Starship will leave Earth and fly through the sky into orbit in the next 2 weeks. But we can mutually agree that this may not be actualized. However, SpaceX has absolutely nothing that is blocking its way to orbit aside the FAA's politically influenced launch license. What else could be the reason for delaying issuing the launch license? So, the delay now seems so deliberate. Now a thoughtful question. Does this mean Starship orbital launch will possibly happen in 2 weeks? Even though SpaceX has a launch license, that does not guarantee that they will urgently prepare to launch the Starship right away. However, they have been working diligently for more than a year to get ready for this launch. And one more time, the Booster 7 and Ship 24 will have to undergo extensive testing in preparation for any future launch, to at least ensure that all the rocket systems will run smoothly. This orbital launch attempt is quite likely to require multiple tries. Even with all the testing SpaceX has done, there are still a lot of unknowns with the Starship rocket, and if you try to launch from Earth, all bets for success will totally be off, meaning anything can happen up there. And that's a sign to show that more needs to be done on the Starship before the launch. SpaceX can try to do more static fire tests before lifting the booster into space. The FAA should grant SpaceX a launch license in a few weeks, and if everything goes according to plan, Musk predicted a launch for the 3rd week of April. The joke is that April 20th, or April 20th, falls during the 3rd week of April. He has previously stated that he never makes an effort to line up with these numbers. Instead, they just keep contacting him. When NASA launched its own massive rocket to the moon in November last year, Elon Musk claimed that he had the most powerful space-worthy rocket disproved. But, in this year, the SpaceX founder could win back the title with his company's next big project. Call it a successful Starship launch project. Everything concerning reaching the speculated launch window for this year seems to be on a knife edge, and things won't be balanced now since the FAA still holds the papers. On the 3-RD/SUP of April, SpaceX rolled Ship 24 out to Starbase orbital launch. Many enthusiasts stood around Starbase to watch what's going on as the company conducts fueling tests with Booster 7 on the orbital launch mount, with Ship 24 on the ground nearby. Information regarding the launch window seems to be close by. For instance, navigational warnings have been issued for the Starship orbital attempt, as Netherlands-based satellite tracker Marco Langbroek release as insight. Those warnings cover a window of April 6th to April 12th. From the FAA's derogative behavior, it doesn't appear that SpaceX will meet up the first part of that proposed window, as the company continue waiting for a launch license from the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, which looks as though the agency is becoming adamant to give SpaceX a change to fly into orbit. But 10 sub th/sup and 11 sub th/sup April look like real possibilities, according to Ars Technica's Eric Berger. On the other hand, NASA continues monitoring the launch window using its high-altitude WB-57 aircraft for observations of the Starship test flight that is hoped to fly through the sky by 10 sub th/sup or 11 sub th/sup of April. Shannon Berger, Mission Operation Manager at NASA, wrote that the agency is closely tracking SpaceX's progress with the massive rocket, as it intends to use the Starship vehicle as a lunar lander for its astronauts as part of the Artemis moon missions. The orbital test flight will attempt to send Ship 24 to make one cycle round the Earth, and ends its journey with a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean near the Hawaiian island of Kauai. And here we go again on another big news. Kathy Lueders, and long-serving engineer and manager at NASA, has reached her retirement date, and she is expected to leave NASA on the 1 sub st/sup of May. Haven quietly made history at NASA, now she's retiring. Thank God for peaceful service in her days in office. This year, 2023, will make it 31 years Kathy has worked in NASA. And of course, she leaves NASA with a long list of accomplishments, one of which was managing the successful launch of the Commercial Crew Program. Lueders graduated from the University of New Mexico with a bachelor's in business administration before going on to New Mexico State University to complete her bachelor's and master's degrees in industrial engineering. In 1992, she started a long career with NASA and gracefully made history. The Commercial Crew Program started as part of the Commercial Orbital Transportation Services Program under President George W. As at then President Bush, operates on a fixed-price basis, unlike most major NASA programs. Companies will bid on contracts to take astronauts to and from the ISS without the expectation that NASA will cover any cost overruns. In return, any company that wins can sell space transportation services to private customers. SpaceX, with its Crew Dragon, and Boeing, with its Starliner, won the commercial crew contracts. Hence, Kathy did an excellent job, especially for the commercial crew contract during her stay in office, and she will always be remembered. Even NASA's Administrator Bill Nelson highlighted the excellent works Kathy has done for NASA and gave her a remarkable speech when he said, "Kathy is a tremendous public servant and a trailblazer, not only serving as the first woman to head space operations for NASA and the first woman to manage our human spaceflight program, but also championing a new way of doing business in low Earth orbit. The public-private commercial model Kathy and her team helped pioneer will return humanity to the moon and prepare us for our next giant leap, the first crewed missions to Mars." However, Ken Bowersox will replace Kathy and continue from where she stopped. Bill Nelson also believes in Ken to offer excellent services to the agency. Bill Nelson said, "Ken has been instrumental to advancing NASA's goals and missions in low Earth orbit and beyond, and I know space operations will be in good hands under his leadership." The next chapter of Lueders' life has yet to be written, whether she will start all over in business, academics, or some other sector. However, her service in NASA tremendously threw light on a significant period in space history and offer insights in controlling some of the most challenging projects that humanity has ever witnessed. Do you think the Starship first orbital launch will happen by April 11, 2023? It could be a real thing since they have announced Starship launch infrastructure final decision. Check on the video to know all details and define your POV.